Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I am doing another solo podcast. I had an absolutely incredible experience last week that I really want to share with you. It was a trip to Napa, and I'd never actually been to Napa. I've traveled quite a bit just over the years. I actually met my wife Allie when we were leading adventure camping tours. We traveled all across the country to tons of national parks and been all through California. She's from San Diego, and so just traveled through that job. And I've traveled with her. She and I have traveled quite extensively, just overseas in Brazil and Croatia, Costa Rica, etc. We both traveled before that, before we met each other as well. So pretty well traveled, generally speaking. Traveled a lot for wrestling too, just over the years, traveling to a lot of different places all around the country. Napa is a place I hadn't yet been to. I enjoy wine. I'm not a wine connoisseur by any stretch. I've actually made wine. I made about a half a dozen batches of wine over the years, so I know a fair bit about the winemaking process, so I can appreciate it. And I had an opportunity to go to Napa and to take advantage of a connection who is very well connected in Napa, and connected to the point where we were able to do some experiences that just the normal person couldn't do because of his connections. I mean, literally, money can't buy some of the experiences that we did. And I want to share with you a little bit about that experience, really the lessons that I learned from it, because it changed me. It moved me. Some of these people that we spoke to, some of the top names in wine around the world, certainly the top names in Napa, most notably is the Harlan Estate. And if you are into wine at all, then you know about the Harlan Estate. If you're not into wine, you may also be familiar with the name Harlan Estate. It is an absolutely amazing place, and it was founded by a gentleman named Bill Harlan. And Bill Harlan made his money in real estate and then started a winery back in 1984 is when he purchased the property. And to put it in perspective, a typical wine person or to anybody who goes to Napa, if you can't even go to Harlan Estate. I mean, you can't even go there. You can't even show up and look at the place. Our connection got us in there. And not only did he get us in there, Bill Harlan himself came out, shook our hands, and we got to talk with him for a couple of minutes. And then we had dinner at Harlan Estate. It was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to in my life. It was an absolutely breathtaking environment, breathtaking place to eat a meal and to break bread with some friends. So I want to share a little bit about sort of these lessons that I've learned that have just really stuck with me. I woke up early on the morning I was leaving. I woke up at 3 a.m, had an early flight from San Francisco because I wanted to get home as quickly as possible, back to the family. Unfortunately, Allie couldn't come with me on this trip, so which kind of made it a little bit hard to enjoy fully the experience. But so I woke up early because I wanted to get back to my family. Actually, one of the people asked me, like, what were you thinking when you booked your flight that early? And I said, well, I was thinking that I wanted to get home to my family. It's actually one of my core values. And so I didn't mind at all waking up at 3 a.m. to get on a flight back home. But as I woke up the morning after we had done the dinner at Harlan Estate, I drove to the airport in San Francisco in the dark. And, we had finished dinner the night before. It was dark out, of course. And I felt like I was still sort of in this environment. So as I drove south through the Napa Valley in the dark by myself, I just drove in silence the whole hour and a half trip. I drove in silence, just sort of still trying to process everything that I experienced. And as I did, I just thought about how profound this entire experience was, and what I could learn from it personally, and what I could share with you. And so I actually dictated some notes to myself of some things that I wanted to share. And I came up with 6 specific things that I wanted to share with you that I know are going to impact with you. I have some impact with you. I spoke to a gentleman yesterday, told him a little bit about some of these things. Not so much about the wine and the good food and whatnot in the experience, in the sort of setting, but more about the level of excellence and level of dedication to doing something great. I mean, to be the best in the world. And it was as profound to him as it was to me. And so I want to share these with you right now. So there are 6 things, 6 real powerful lessons that will apply to your life that I learned through this experience at Napa, and speaking to and learning about some of these top wineries in the world. And so number 1 is this. And again, like I said, there are 6, and number 1 is this. I'm going to relate all of these first to a real world experience, and then back to what I learned from this experience out in Napa. No, so the first one is this. I was driving a few weeks ago with a friend, and just driving down 29 here in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I live, and a lot of traffic on 29, and someone cut him off. He was driving, and I was in the passenger seat, and somebody cut him off, and my friend got angry. Rode up on this guy's bumper, went around him, ended up cutting him off, and it was just this episode of road rage that was absolutely unnecessary. And to me, I'm thinking like, this guy could have cut us off. He definitely didn't see us, and who knows what's going on in this guy's day? Maybe he's rushing to the hospital, or maybe he just got fired from his job, or had an argument with his spouse, or whatever the case might be. I don't know. Didn't know what was going on with his day, and there was certainly no need for this incidence of road rage. But this was something that was outside of our control, that affected my friend, and it, in turn affected me, and really could have caused an accident, and could have gotten much worse, could have affected our families. But it ruined certainly the next hour or so of both of our lives. It was an anxiety provoking incident, and I'm out in Napa, and I'm talking to one individual named Corey, and Corey is I don't know his exact title, but he was the head winemaker, head vintner, I guess, at Harlan Estate, actually one of the Harlan properties called Promontory. And Corey talked about how as a farmer, he kept referring to himself as a farmer, which he is. And how you can do everything right. You can follow the process. You can focus on the process, and just like I talk about a lot, to focus on the process, not the outcome. But you focus on the process. You focus on doing everything right, from planting the vines and planting the seeds and growing the vines and doing everything throughout the whole lifespan of the vine and throughout the whole growing season. And at the end of the growing season, you can get hit by a hailstorm, and it ruins everything, or just about everything. So there's this level of understanding that you can only focus on the things that are within your control. And oftentimes we focus on things that are outside of our control. I mean, we couldn't control the fact that this individual cut us off when I was driving with my friend. We couldn't control that. But my friend got emotionally wrapped up in that. And as a farmer, as a winemaker, as a grape grower, these individuals who are the best in the world at what they do, they can put all this effort into the process, but the outcome can be complete failure because it's outside of their control. And I think that's one thing that we really need to realize is we need to only focus on things that are within our control. There's going to be so many things in our lives that are outside of our control, whether it's your boss or the weather or anything else that happens. You go to a restaurant and they screw up your order, or your car breaks down. There are things that are within your control and things that are outside your control. And focusing on what's in your control and letting go of the rest. I'm not saying it's easy. None of this, what I'm going to tell you, is easy, but it's simple, right? And if you can learn how to let go of whatever's affecting you right now. There's something probably gnawing at you, and maybe it's within your control, maybe it's outside of your control, but think about the things that are outside of your control that you can't impact. Let go of those and focus on the process, not the outcome. So that's number one. Number two is this. If you're a coach, you want to win the championship, right? You want to win it this year. If you're an entrepreneur, you want your business to take off right away. If you're, we all want to make more money. I think about head wrestling coach Steve Garland, who's a close friend of mine, former wrestling teammate of mine at Virginia. I interviewed him in episode 67. So, he's a great, amazing interview, an amazing story, by the way. Interview number 67. So you go to jimharshawjr.com/67. But Steve is an amazing coach, and he really focuses on developing the total person. As a matter of fact, Nick Salzer, Nick was a 3-time All-American wrestler, and one time I had Nick with me one time when I was addressing a large group of alumni, not wrestling alumni, but just alumni from the University of Virginia, and I was telling them a little bit about the athletic department, and I introduced Nick, and one of the individuals said to Nick, he said, Nick, you were a 3-time All-American, you're an amazing wrestler, you could have gone to any of the top, sort of elite wrestling schools, traditionally elite wrestling schools like Iowa or Oklahoma State or Penn State. And they said, why did you choose Virginia over them? And he said, because Coach Garland cares more about me as a person than me as an athlete or me as a wrestler. And I thought that was really profound of him to say that. Tony Bennett, our head basketball coach at Virginia, he always talks about how it's more than winning. Our head football coach, same way, about it's more than winning. It's about developing people, and that's their vision, right? That's what they're doing. What they're doing is not, teaching people to wrestle or how to bounce and shoot a basketball, or a rowing coach who's won 2 national championships at Virginia. He always talks about, he's like, I'm doing more than just teaching girls how to row a boat fast. He's building young people and teaching them lessons. So they have this bigger vision of what they're doing. And Bill Harlan of Harlan Estate, who owns several of these properties of these wineries that we visited out in Napa, it's so much more than just making wine. He believes that people come together around a good bottle of wine. A good bottle of wine can just bring people together to have an amazing experience. It starts with the wine, but it's all about truly and deeply and sort of the foundation of this is it's about the relationship. It's not about the wine. It's not about making wine. It's not about growing grapes. It's about bringing people together. And bring up one other amazing leader that's impacted my life. Craig Littlepage is the head athletic director at the University of Virginia. UVA is one of the top athletic departments year in, year out, as noted in the Learfield Directors Cup rankings, top 10, I think the last 3 years in a row now. And he says, athletics, why athletics at a big school, at any school is athletics brings people together. There's other reasons for athletics, the educational value and otherwise, but it brings people together. So similar to Bill Harlan's vision of wine, good wine bringing people together. So what's your vision? What's your vision for your life? Are you just showing up at work to punch the clock? Or are you doing something bigger than that? Are you just coming home to your family in the evenings because just that's where you live? Or is it something bigger than that? What's that vision? What's that bigger vision for your life or for your business or for your organization? So that's number 2. Number 3, I talked about when we start a business, we want that success right away. I talked about that earlier. We want revenue, and when our kids get into sports, we want success immediately. But with with the Harlan Estate, they like I said, they bought the property in 1984, and typically when you start a winery in a vineyard, it's about 3 or 4 years before you put out your first release, before you can really put out wine. Well, it took them 12 years, 12 long years. I mean, they prepared the soil, and they grew the vines, and they grew the grapes, and and they produced wine, but it just wasn't wine that was up to their standard to release to the world. So they didn't have their true first release for 12 years. 12 years. I mean, the amount of patience that it takes to wait that long. You have sunk costs. You have invested money, and before they could get a return on that or their investment, they had to wait 12 long years. So my question for you is, like, how long are you willing to wait? And what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to say no to so that you can say yes to an amazing, amazing life, an amazing finished product? So I thought that was a powerful example. And actually, matter of fact, there was another example. So we were touring the one winery, and they talked about these beautiful, beautiful oak barrels that they had. And they weren't your typical size or shape. They were massive oak barrels. They were probably, 6 foot tall, sort of ovals. If they're laying on their sides, or they were sort of propped up on these stanchions. And they were sort of oval, but they were probably about 6 feet tall, and maybe 3-4 feet wide, 5 feet wide, even something like that, and maybe 8 feet deep. So if you were to stand the barrel up on end, it would be like 8 feet, something like that. So massive oak barrels. But they said whenever they, this was not at Harlan Estate. This is one of the other Harlan properties. This one I think was at Promontory, and they said when we first wanted to use this type of oak barrel, nobody was making this. How they made them, like, years and years ago, and nobody. They had to travel around the world to find someone to make who made these barrels, and they found a guy in Austria, and they had exchanged emails with this guy for quite a while, and he said he was not going to make barrels and send them to them. He had too many clients, and he was sort of like happy with what he was doing, and didn't want to take on any more clients, and said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not going to make you any barrels. So they emailed back and forth for a long time. And this one individual, Corey, he flew over and met with them. And he actually convinced the guy to make him one barrel. And he was there for like 2 weeks and spent some time with this guy, built a relationship, and convinced him to make him a barrel. The guy says, sure, I'll make you a barrel. It'll be ready in 10 years. 10 years. But turns out that's how long it takes to make one of these amazing barrels. Just like it took, Harlan Estate 12 years to produce their first bottle of wine that they released to the public. It took this guy, this barrel builder, to build an amazing, amazing barrel. It took him 10 years to cure the wood and whatnot and everything that goes into that. So I thought that was a pretty interesting example of patience to build something excellent. That was number 3. All right, number 4 of 6. One of the interesting things I hear about successful entrepreneurs, and especially people that have like a portfolio, whether it's in sales or, like financial advisors, for example, they'll oftentimes trim the bottom 10 or 20% of their clients annually. And the interesting thing is, by letting them go, it frees up their time to go attract more and more, of the sort of ideal client for them. And because saying yes to everything means you're saying no to something, right? And the interesting thing that I learned in Napa is that Harlan discards I think it was about 30% they said of their grapes. They just discard them. So they, at some point during the growing season, they'll go out and pick a bunch of the grapes and just throw them away. And so that the remaining grapes get all the nutrients they need to make exquisite, amazing, excellent, world-class wine. I mean, they could do more. They can absolutely produce more wine, but it wouldn't be the best wine. So they make a choice, a tough decision, a hard choice to make a better product, to sacrifice so they can make a better product. So think about that in your life. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice, to say no to so you can live a better life or make more money or have a better business or have a stronger relationship or whatever the case might be, whatever, to lose more weight, whatever the case might be. You have to say no to something, right? You can't be everything to everyone. So have a vision. Think about what your vision is and live it out and make those sacrifices that you need to make to make something excellent. So that's number 4. Number 5. This moment right now, you're sitting there or maybe running or working out, listening to this while you're working out, and you're listening to this podcast episode. You're at a unique place in your life. And I don't know what that is. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you are married or not married, or maybe you have a great job, or maybe you're in between jobs, or maybe you're an entrepreneur and a business owner, or maybe you're a teacher and a coach. Whatever the case might be, maybe you're middle aged, maybe you're older, maybe you're younger. Maybe you have a college education, or maybe you don't. Maybe you have a PhD. Maybe you have a high school education. Whatever the case might be, you have this. You're at this certain point in your life. You're at a unique place in your life, in a unique season of your life, and you have unique influences in your life. You have experiences that are unique to you. You have different influences of people that have come into your life and maybe left your life that have influenced you. And they're all part of you right now at this moment. And that's going to change over time. It's going to change in the next year, 5 years, 10 years. Shoot, it might change next week. But you're at this unique point in your life based on what you've got. And you should create your life based on that. You don't have to look at your neighbor, or you don't have to look at society. You don't have to look at the average or the status quo. You don't have to look at other things and other people and do things the same way that they do, because you are you. You're uniquely you. You're uniquely different than everybody else on the planet. So you don't have to do things the same way. You don't have to succumb to that pressure to do things like everybody else does. At Harlan Estate, in many of these sort of elite wineries and vineyards, this was absolutely fascinating to me. As an environmental science major in college, this was absolutely fascinating. And an outdoors guy, lover of the outdoors and student of nature, I thought it fascinating that every block, I think they call it, every sort of field of vines has a unique microclimate. And interestingly, at this one property where we were at, Napa Valley Reserve, they talked about, the head winemaker talked about how from one field to another, they're about 300 yards apart. They have an 8-degree annual average temperature difference, 300 yards apart. And it's because of the unique lay of the land around there, the sort of unique geology and structure of the land, the hills, and sort of, when the sun sets, they get, the one field gets less sun because the sun sets on it, much earlier in the day, and sort of different wind patterns, etc. It was fascinating to hear that. And this was sort of repeated from different people that I had met over the few days there. And, there's different soils. And there was one property that we were on that we went from that place. He said that tree line, he said, you look at that tree line right there, which is about maybe 300 feet away, 200 feet away. And there was a tree line. He said, just across the other side of that tree line, there's a different type of soil. Right now we're on Rutherford, and if you go over there, it's something else. And there's all these sort of different soil types. I forget what he said. 30 some soil types in Napa Valley, and there's only 40 in the world. But there are these sort of distinctly different soil types so close to each other. So you can grow different types of grapes, and different type of grapes do better in these different soil types and different environments and different climates and different hillsides and different slopes and different temperatures and different wind patterns, and all these things uniquely affect the type of wine that you can grow there. And it's fascinating. So, if you think about trying to create an amazing wine, then you have to use all of these things either to your advantage or try to deal with them and mitigate the challenges of any of those. And they always talk about, they don't try to duplicate their wine from year to year. They try to, use the unique growing season to create the best wine they can possibly create. So they're not trying to, their Cabernet Sauvignon, they're not going to try and make it taste this year's taste the same as last year's, taste the same as the year before's, and taste the same as next year's, because they're all going to have unique growing seasons. It might be wet, it might be dry, it might be sunny, it might be cloudy, it might be windy. You may have storms, it may start early, it may start late. Whatever the case might be, you have these sort of unique influences, and so do you in your life. So don't look around you and think, I'm supposed to be that, or I'm supposed to do it this way. You don't. You have to do it your way, the way that fits you, fits your lifestyle. And you're going to feel, it's amazing. You're gonna feel different, right? You're gonna be doing things a different way. And I've had people tell me I'm wired differently, and for better or worse, I think I am wired differently than most folks. But we all are. We're all wired a little bit differently. So take that into account as you build your life, and as you live out your life, and as you go through your days and years. So that's number 5. And now for number 6, sixth and final one. Most people that I talk to, especially when I'm doing coaching, I talk to a lot of individuals who are drifting through their life without a plan. They tell me they don't feel focused. They lack focus, throughout their day. They're easily distracted. They don't feel like they live a balanced life. They don't know what their goals are. They don't even know how to set the right goals, so they don't set goals because they feel like they don't want to set the wrong goals. I talk to so many people like that. They don't have this vision for their life, and they just haven't spent the time to do it, and they don't really know how to. They don't have a structure. They never learned how to do that, right? And because of that, they have no plan. They have no plan for their life. And I actually spoke to one individual recently, and he said if he doesn't get clarity on his goals and start living consistently around those goals, then he literally told me he's going to be dead in just a few years. He said probably 3 to 5 years I'll be dead. He was overweight, and I'm really trying to do anything I can to help this individual and reaching out to him. And but he doesn't have that vision, and maybe your situation is the same. Maybe yours is not as nearly as extreme, but Bill Harlan at Harlan Estate talked about he has a 100-year plan, a 100-year vision for his properties. And think about that, 100 years. And he actually felt at some point recently, he's felt confident enough in his 100-year plan that he now has he's starting to work on a 200-year plan. 200 years, right? So think about that. What's your 100-year plan? Like 100 years from now, you're probably not going to be alive, but how's your life going to be lived out 100 years from now? What's going to be left? What will carry on? Most of us, it's our children. Maybe it's if you're an entrepreneur, maybe it's your business. Maybe it's a book you want to leave behind. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's a legacy of some way, shape, or form. Something you can leave behind to impact the world. What's your 100-year plan? What's your 5-year plan? Your 10-year plan? Take the time. I always say, take the time to get clear on your goals. At the end of my podcast, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a necessary step on your path to success. Do that, because the best in the world, whether you're making wine or whether you're an athlete or an entrepreneur or anything else, they go to extreme measures, and they have a vision. They build a vision. They live their life toward that vision. And I encourage you to do the same. So those are sort of the 6 things that I learned, and touch on each of them real quickly as I wrap up here. Number 1 was focus on things that are don't focus on things that are outside your control. You can grow have the grapes and everything perfect all season long and get hit by a storm at the end of the year and ruins everything. So focus on what's in your control. Number two, have a vision that's bigger than just selling a product or winning a championship or making $1 million. You know, what is it that you're actually doing? You know, are you just showing up at work? Are you just showing up at home? Or is there something deeper and more important that you're doing? Number three, patience. You know, patience to create something amazing. You know, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a grind. mind. It may take longer to do. It will take longer to do than the average if you're trying to create something above average. Number 4, sacrifice. What are you going to sacrifice to have a better end product? Are you going to trim the bottom 10 or 20% of your clients if you're in sales, just like they throw away a percentage of their grapes during the growing year, so the rest of the grapes can have something amazing. And by the way, this is sort of along the lines of the philosophy of Greg McKeown, who the best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author of the book called Essentialism. I interviewed Greg in episode 68. Amazing book, and he talks about the disciplined pursuit of less, and that's exactly what we're talking about here with number 4. Number 5, you are unique. You're in a unique place in your life, and you have unique influences, and you have unique experiences, and create your life around that. Don't try to mimic or duplicate anybody else because you are unique, and you're going to have a unique way of going about things. Number 6, and finally, is what's your 100-year plan? What's your big long-term vision for your life? So spend some time working on those things. I hope you enjoyed this. It was an amazing experience for me to sort of learn these things among the best of the best in the world at what they do. And I hope those can be lived out in your life in some small way. So until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.